The gavel slammed down like a thunderclap. Order in my court. The old wooden benches creaked as everyone in the courtroom froze, the air so thick with tension you could practically taste it. A black mother sat at the defense table, her hands trembling as if she was gripping onto her whole world. Beside her, two teenage twins, tall, proud, but with fire in their eyes, stood up before anyone told them they could, and that's when it happened. The white judge leaned forward, veins visible in his temple, his jaw tight. His booming voice filled the room. Your mother ruined everything. Don't you dare defend her lies, but the twins didn't back down. One of them, his voice shaking but strong, shot back. She didn't ruin us. You did, you left us. You left her. And now you want to sit there in that robe like you're some stranger? The entire courtroom gasped. The judge's face went pale, like someone had ripped the floor out from under him. His eyes darted between the mother, the twins, and the walls closing in on his own secret. No one in that room expected what came next, because in that single second, the mask slipped. And the man who spent his whole career passing judgment on others realized he was the father of the very kid standing before him. But that wasn't the end. Because instead of admitting the truth, instead of standing up like a man, he pointed his finger at their mother, his voice spitting venom. She trapped me. She ruined my life. She's been lying all these years. The twins' world tilted upside down, the entire courtroom spinning with whispers and shock. And right there, before anyone could breathe, the battle lines were drawn. Because this wasn't just a trial anymore. This was a fight for truth, a fight for survival, a fight to finally expose what had been buried for nearly 2 decades, and it all started with one secret the judge never wanted to face. Long before the courtroom, long before the gavel echoed through that heavy silence, there was just a small 2-bedroom apartment on the south side of town, cracked paint on the walls, neighbors yelling through thin ceilings, and the steady hum of traffic outside the window that never really let you sleep. That's where Angela Carter raised her twins. Alone. Angela wasn't the kind of mother who complained. She worked nights at a nursing home, then rushed home before sunrise just to make sure breakfast was hot on the table. Some mornings she'd still be in her scrubs when her twins, Jordan and Jada, rushed out the door, backpacks half-zipped, laughing over some inside joke only siblings could understand. She didn't have much, but what she had she poured into them. Jordan, the older twin by 6 minutes, carried himself like he was the man of the house. 17, lanky but sharp-eyed, protective of his sister and their mom. He was quiet most of the time, but when he spoke, his words carried weight. Jada, on the other hand, was all fire. Quick to laugh, quicker to fight back if someone disrespected her or her family. Teachers said she was too mouthy, but Angela saw it for what it was. Strength. And together, they gave Angela something to live for. But life on their side of town wasn't fair, and it never pretended to be. At school, the twins were bright, but that didn't matter much when teachers looked past them or assumed the worst. Jordan got stopped in the hallway more than once by the school security guard, accused of wandering even though he had a hall pass in hand. Jada, sitting in class, would raise her hand with the answer, only to be ignored until a white student said the same thing. They'd come home frustrated, slamming their books on the table, telling their mom how tired they were of feeling invisible. Or worse, like trouble waiting to happen, Angela listened every time. She didn't sugarcoat the truth, but she always found a way to put steel in their spines. Baby, this world's gonna try to write a story about you before you even pick up the pen. Don't you ever let them finish it for you. The twins carried those words like armor, but no matter how hard Angela worked, there was one question she couldn't answer. Mom, who's our dad? The twins asked it in different ways over the years. Sometimes softly, sometimes angrily, sometimes not at all, just letting the silence stretch between them. And every time Angela's face tightened, like the weight of that question pressed on an old wound. He made his choice, she would finally say, and I made mine. My choice was you. They stopped asking eventually, but that didn't mean the hole wasn't there. Every basketball game Jordan played, every award Jada won, that empty spot in the stands felt like it burned brighter. And what stung even more? On more than one occasion, people, white people, whispered things Angela pretended not to hear. She trapped him. That's why he left. She wanted a meal ticket. None of them knew the truth. And Angela never defended herself. She just kept her head high and raised her babies. By the time the twins turned 17, life had gotten heavier. Bills piled higher, Angela's health started to show cracks from all those long shifts, and the whispers in the community turned sharper. One night, while helping her mom fold laundry, Jada said it plain. "Feels like people are waiting for us to fail, Mom, like it don't matter how hard we try, they already picked the ending for us." Angela paused, a tired smile crossing her lips. "Then we'll just have to surprise them, won't we?" But inside, she knew a storm was brewing. The twins had no idea that the answers to their deepest questions, the face of the man they'd wondered about for years, wasn't hiding far away. He wasn't some stranger they'd never meet. He was closer than they ever could have imagined. Closer than Angela would have ever wanted. Because soon, their lives would be dragged into a courtroom. And the man standing at the bench wouldn't just be holding the gavel. He'd be holding the very secret Angela had buried for nearly 2 decades, and once it cracked open, nothing would ever be the same again. The first real shift came on a Thursday morning. Angela had just gotten off a double shift at the nursing home. Her eyes stung, her legs ached, but she forced herself to smile as she set a plate of scrambled eggs on the table for Jordan and Jada. "Eat up. Y'all got a big test today," she said, brushing her braids back and pretending the exhaustion didn't weigh her down. Jordan forked at the eggs, distracted. "Ma, you don't gotta do this every morning. We can handle breakfast." Angela gave him that look only mothers have. "And let y'all walk into that school on empty stomachs?" "No, sir." She leaned against the counter, watching them like she always did, memorizing their faces as if she knew the world would try to take pieces of them away. At school, the injustice wasn't loud. It was small, sharp, and constant, like paper cuts that never healed. Jordan had always been good at math, the kind of kid who didn't just solve problems but explained them so others could understand. One afternoon, his teacher handed back a test with a red 98 circled at the top. "Nice work, Jordan," she said, but then, almost as an afterthought, added, "Did you study extra hard this time? Maybe had some help?" Jordan froze. He glanced around at the smirks on a couple of classmates' faces. Nobody ever asked the white kids that when they aced a test. He forced a smile. "No, ma'am. Just studied." Inside, though, something cracked. Jada faced it too, though hers came wrapped in compliments with edges sharp enough to cut. "You're so articulate," her English teacher told her once, after she read an essay out loud. "You don't sound like, well, you know," Jada's throat tightened. "No, I don't know." The teacher blinked, smiled too wide, and moved on without answering. When Jada told her mom later, Angela sighed, her shoulders heavy. "Baby, some folks think they're giving you praise when what they're really showing is ignorance. Don't let it steal your shine." But Jada's shine dimmed anyway, little by little. Then came the day everything boiled over. Angela had taken the twins to the grocery store after her shift. She was in her scrubs still, hair tied back, looking every bit like the hard-working woman she was. As they moved down the aisles, Angela noticed it, the man in the red polo. Store security, following them. At first she tried to ignore it, but every corner they turned, there he was, his walkie-talkie clipped to his belt, his eyes glued to them like they were criminals planning a heist instead of a mom and 2 kids buying bread and milk. Jada caught it too. "Mom, he's following us." Angela placed a steadying hand on her daughter's arm. "Keep your head up. Don't give him the satisfaction." But by checkout, it exploded. The security guard stepped forward, his voice loud enough for half the line to hear. "Ma'am, I'm gonna need you to open your bag." Angela's face flushed. "Excuse me?" "Store policy." "Random check," her voice shook. "Random? You've been tailing me since produce." The guard's jaw tightened. "Just doing my job." "Unless you've got something to hide?" Gasps rippled through the line. Jordan balled his fists at his side, heat rushing through him. Angela, fighting to keep her dignity, slowly opened her purse. Nothing inside but her wallet, keys, and a half-used bottle of lotion. The guard glanced, smirked, and waved them off. All clear. But the damage was done. Every eye in that store had burned into them, branding them guilty before proven innocent. Outside, Jada kicked the cart so hard it rattled. "Why we always gotta prove we belong? Why they always treat us like thieves?" Angela hugged her tight, blinking back tears. "Because this world is unfair, baby. But don't you ever let them make you believe their lies about who you are." From then on, the twins started seeing the world with sharper eyes. Jordan noticed the way police cruisers slowed down whenever he and his friends walked home. Jeddah noticed the cashier who asked to see ID for her debit card, even though the white girl before her slid through without a word. Angela, meanwhile, carried her own battle scars. She knew what people said behind her back, that she was a single mom who couldn't keep a man, that she was raising kids who'd end up like statistics. She kept quiet, but inside her chest the anger grew. Not just anger at the world, but anger at the man who had left her to face it all alone. The tension hit another breaking point at school. Jordan had been falsely accused of cheating on a project. A teacher claimed his work was too advanced to have been his own. He was called to a hearing with the school board. Angela came, dressed in her Sunday best, clutching the papers that proved her son's hours of research. She stood before the board, mostly older white men and women, and pleaded her case. My son is gifted. He worked for this. Don't punish him because you can't believe a black boy could be brilliant. The room fell silent. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Finally, one muttered, "We'll review the evidence." Jordan was cleared later, but the sting of the accusation lingered. It wasn't just about school anymore. It was about the world trying to put them in a box they didn't belong in. Angela tucked the twins in that night, her heart breaking at the weight pressing on their young shoulders. "Life's gonna keep testing you," she whispered, smoothing Jada's hair. "But don't forget, you're not fighting alone. You got me. You got each other." The twins nodded, their eyes heavy with sleep. But as Angela sat by the window later, staring out at the city lights, her chest tightened. She could fight the whispers, the stares, the daily grind of prejudice. But there was one battle she couldn't escape forever. The man who had left her. The man who had built a new life without them. The man who still had power. Power that could destroy everything she'd worked for. And sooner than she wanted to believe. That man's path would collide with hers in the most public, devastating way possible. A courtroom, with her children watching. The twins didn't know it yet. But every injustice they faced, every cut, every scar, was preparing them for the fight of their lives. Because when the truth finally came out, it wouldn't just be about their father's betrayal. It would be about a system that was never built for them. A system that could crush their mother, unless they found the strength to stand up and fight back. And the next time they faced injustice, it wouldn't be in a grocery store or a school hallway. It would be in front of a judge. The walls started closing in on Angela and her twins. It wasn't just the daily microaggressions anymore. The system itself seemed to lean against them, heavy, unrelenting, waiting for the moment they would break. The first crack came from a knock on the door. Angela opened it to find Mr. Whitman, a white man in a pressed gray suit with thin glasses perched on his nose. He introduced himself as a caseworker from Child and Family Services. "Just routine check-ins," he said, smiling too brightly. "We've had some reports." Angela's stomach dropped. Reports from who? Inside, the twins hovered behind her. Jordan's fists clenched. Jada's eyes darted between her mom and the stranger. Whitman's gaze swept the small apartment, the second-hand furniture, the unpaid bills stacked on the counter. Single mother, long work hours, teenagers often unsupervised. Nothing to worry about, of course, just keeping records. Angela forced her voice steady. "My kids are fine. They're honor roll students. They take care of each other when I'm working. Nobody here is neglected." But Whitman's smirk lingered. "Of course. Still on, appearances matter." When he left, Jordan slammed the door behind him. "They think just 'cause we black we can't be a family." Angela hugged both twins, her arms trembling. She knew how these reports could snowball, one accusation leading to another until the system tore families apart. That night, Angela couldn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the flickering streetlight outside, memories clawing their way back. She saw him again, Richard Hayes. Back when he was young, handsome, with smooth promises that made her believe she wasn't alone. He was from a different world. Law school student, polished, white, ambitious. For a time she thought love could bridge every divide. But when she got pregnant, his mask slipped. "You planned this," he accused, his face red with anger. "You think I'm giving up my future for some mistake?" Angela had begged him. Not for herself, but for the child they'd created. He turned his back anyway. She hadn't seen him in nearly 2 decades. Until years later his name popped up in the news. Judge Richard Hayes, rising star of the courthouse, respected in every circle Angela was never invited into. Now she prayed their paths would never cross again. But deep down she knew life had other plans. As word of the caseworker visit spread, neighbors and community members began chiming in. At church, Sister Dolores, an older black woman with a sharp tongue, pulled Angela aside. "Baby, they always watching us closer. Don't give 'em a reason." Angela nodded, but inside she bristled. Why should the burden always be on her to prove she was good enough? Meanwhile, Mr. Green, a barber who knew everybody's business, leaned in when Jordan came for a cut. "Boy, keep your nose clean. One wrong move, they'll make you out a criminal. And they won't need much evidence either." The warnings were meant with love, but to the twins it felt suffocating, like every step they took was being tracked. Every move a test they couldn't afford to fail. The pressure boiled over one Friday night. Jordan and a couple of friends were walking home from basketball practice, their sneakers slapping the pavement, their laughter echoing down the block. That's when the red and blue lights flashed. "Hands up. Don't move!" 2 officers jumped out of a cruiser, hands on their weapons. Jordan's heart pounded. His friends froze, fear plastered on their faces. "What's the problem, officer?" Jordan managed, his voice shaking. "Got a call about suspicious activity. Matches your description." Suspicious? They were kids with gym bags. But Jordan knew better than to argue. He lifted his hands higher, swallowing the anger burning inside him. The officers patted them down, rifled through their bags, found nothing. Then just like that they were dismissed. "Stay out of trouble," one officer muttered before driving away. Jordan walked home in silence. That night he told his mom, and Angela's knees nearly buckled. She pulled him into her arms, whispering thanks that he made it home. But inside, terror coiled. Next time it could be worse. Angela didn't know it yet, but the system was closing ranks. The caseworker came again. This time his questions sharper. "Do you ever leave the children alone overnight?" At school, Jada's fiery nature led to a suspension after she snapped back at a teacher who accused her of being aggressive. Bills piled higher. Whispers grew louder. The system painted Angela not as a hard-working mother fighting for her family, but as a liability. And then came the letter. Angela unfolded it at the kitchen table, her hands trembling. A notice to appear in family court. Her heart stopped when she read the name of the presiding judge, Judge Richard Hayes, the father her twins had never met. From here, 2 stories began to run side by side. The present, Angela preparing for the courtroom, terrified of what it meant for her children. The past, memories of Richard, the way he had walked away, the venom in his words, the betrayal that never healed. Angela told no one the truth, not even Jordan and Jada. How could she? How could she explain that the man deciding their fate was also the man who had abandoned them? But secrets have a way of surfacing, and in a courtroom under oath there is nowhere left to hide. Angela considered telling her twins. She'd sit down with them after dinner, open her mouth, wow, and then stop. What would they think? Would they hate her for keeping it from them? Would they hate him? Her silence felt like protection. But in truth, it was a ticking bomb. Meanwhile, Jordan grew restless. Why we gotta keep letting them treat us like this? Why we gotta stay quiet? Angela grabbed his hand, her eyes pleading. Because speaking out comes with a cost. And I can't lose you. But silence had its own cost. By staying quiet, Angela allowed Richard Hayes to rise unchecked, his name praised in newspapers, his reputation spotless. A man who wore the robe of justice while hiding the ugliest injustice of all, abandoning his own children. The day of court drew closer. Angela stood in front of the mirror, smoothing her dress, whispering prayers under her breath. Jordan adjusted his tie, awkward in the suit that was a size too big. Jada rolled her eyes but secretly checked her reflection twice, not wanting to look out of place. Angela looked at them and felt her heart twist. They had no idea the man they were about to face was more than a judge. They were walking straight into the storm. Because once that gavel hit, every secret she had tried to bury, every injustice they had endured, every scar carved into their lives by racism and abandonment, it would all come crashing into the open, and nothing, not love, not silence, not fear, could stop it. The courthouse loomed like a fortress, cold gray stone, tall steps that felt like they went on forever. Inside, the air buzzed with a kind of tension that made your skin crawl. Angela walked in first, her back straight, but her hands trembled at her sides. Jordan and Jada followed, stiff in their borrowed suits, their eyes darting at the security officers, the attorneys, the strangers whispering in the gallery. This wasn't just a hearing. It was a judgment on their entire lives. They took their seats at the defense table. Across from them, a stern prosecutor shuffled papers, lips pursed like he'd already decided the outcome. The gallery was sprinkled with curious onlookers, some neighbors, some strangers, all waiting for a spectacle. And then the door opened. All rise. When Judge Richard Hayes walked in, the room stilled. His black robe trailed behind him, his expression carved from stone. To anyone else, he was the picture of authority, respected, feared, untouchable. But to Angela, his face was a knife twisting in an old wound. She couldn't breathe. For a moment, the years fell away, and she saw the boy she once loved, the man who abandoned her, now elevated above her in every way possible. Jordan glanced at his mother. "Ma, you okay?" Angela forced a nod. "I'm fine, baby." But her voice cracked. The hearing began. The prosecutor wasted no time painting Angela as unstable. "Your Honor, this is a case of neglect. Ms. Carter works excessive hours, leaving her children unsupervised. We have reports of truancy, of behavioral issues, even police encounters. The state is concerned for the welfare of these minors." Angela's stomach dropped. Every struggle, every sacrifice twisted into a weapon against her. Her attorney, a young black woman named Danielle Brooks, stood to counter. "Your Honor, Angela Carter is a dedicated mother. Her children are honor roll students. Any so-called behavioral issues are a result of the systemic biases they face every day. She has done everything in her power to provide stability and love." The judge's eyes flicked down, cold and detached. "We'll hear the evidence." The prosecutor called Jordan first. Jordan rose, his voice steady at first, but his hands shook as he swore to tell the truth. He told them about school, how teachers assumed the worst of him, how he'd been accused of cheating simply for being smart. He spoke about the police stop, how he thought he might not make it home that night. The courtroom murmured, some eyes softening, others rolling with skepticism. When it was Jada's turn, she stepped up with fire in her eyes. "They say my mom neglects us. That's a lie. She works harder than anybody in this room. She raised us when nobody else would. When teachers ignored me, she told me to keep shining. When people treated us like criminals, she told us to hold our heads up. My mom is the reason we're still standing." Her voice cracked. "She didn't abandon us. She didn't walk away. She stayed." Angela's tears fell silently. For a moment, Judge Hayes looked rattled. His hand gripped the gavel tighter. His jaw clenched. He cleared his throat. "That will be enough," he said sharply, as though their words had cut too close. Angela caught it, that flicker in his eyes, that crack in the mask. She knew him. She'd known him better than anyone once. And in that moment, she realized he wasn't just shaken by their testimony. He was shaken by them, by their faces, their voices. Their very existence. The prosecutor pressed on. "Your Honor, with all due respect, Ms. Carter has a history of poor judgment. She became pregnant young, out of wedlock, by a man who left her, and she has never been forthcoming about his identity. Isn't it fair to question the environment she's provided?" Angela's heart stopped. Richard's gavel slammed. "Order!" his voice thundered, but his face had gone pale. Jordan's head snapped toward his mother. "What's he talking about? Who left you, Ma?" The gallery buzzed. Whispers filled the air. Angela's lips trembled. "Not here. Not like this," but the twins pressed. Jada stood, her voice breaking. "Tell us, Mom." "Tell us who he was." The judge's voice boomed. "Silence!" But the silence that followed was deafening. Because in that instant, Jordan looked at him, really looked, and the pieces clicked. The line of his jaw, the shape of his eyes, the same stubborn set of the mouth. Jordan's voice dropped to a whisper that carried through the whole room. "It's you." The air shattered. Gasps erupted. The gallery leaned forward. Even the prosecutor froze. Jada's knees buckled. No, it can't be." Angela buried her face in her hands. The secret she'd guarded for 17 years lay bare in the harsh light of the courtroom. Richard Hayes's face twisted. His hands trembled as he tried to keep control. This is irrelevant. This woman trapped me. His voice cracked, venom dripping from every word. She ruined my life. She chose to have those children to manipulate me, to destroy everything I worked for. The twins recoiled as if struck. The room exploded in shouts. Angela shot to her feet, her voice shaking but fierce. Don't you dare blame me. Don't you dare stand up there in that robe, acting like you're a victim. You left me. You left them. You chose your reputation over your own blood. The judge's face went red. He slammed the gavel again and again. Order, order. But order was gone. Jordan's chest heaved. So all these years we wondered who our father was. We thought maybe he was dead. Maybe he didn't know. But you knew, and you walked away. Jada's voice shook with rage. You judged Mom, you judged us. And all this time you were the coward hiding behind that bench. Angela reached for her children, but they pulled away. Their pain too raw, too sharp. The courtroom wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was a battlefield of truth, betrayal, and racism laid bare. Because Richard Hayes wasn't just any father. He was a white man who had chosen his career, his privilege, and his comfort over the black family he had helped create. And now, faced with the truth, he did what powerful men always did. He pointed the finger at the woman who had carried the weight alone. The gallery buzzed like a hive ready to explode. Some cried, some shouted, some shook their heads in disgust. Angela stood tall, tears streaking her face, but her voice steady. You may wear that robe, Richard. You may sit above us, but you'll never rise higher than the truth. These children are yours, and the world deserves to know exactly what kind of man you are. The judge froze. His gavel hovered midair. For the first time in his career, he had no words. The courtroom, the twins, the world, all stared at him, waiting. And in that silence, the truth thundered louder than any gavel could. The courtroom never truly calmed that day. Even after the gavel dropped, even after Judge Hayes fled to his chambers, the storm lingered in the air. People spilled into the halls, their voices hushed but urgent. Angela sat with her children in a quiet corner, their faces pale, their hearts heavy with the weight of what had been revealed. For years, she had carried the truth alone, shielding them from the pain of knowing that their father had chosen power over love. Now the truth was no longer hidden, and the wound it left cut deeper than any secret ever could. Jordan sat hunched forward, fists pressed against his temples. All this time, Ma, he was right there. And he didn't even look at us. Jada's voice was sharper, angrier. He called us a mistake. In front of everybody. Angela reached for them, her hands trembling. Babies, listen to me. You are not mistakes. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Don't let his weakness define you. But she could see it in their eyes. The betrayal had carved something permanent. News traveled fast. Within days, headlines blared. Respected judge exposed as estranged father of teen defendants. Allegations of racism, abandonment, Rock City courthouse. Some called Angela brave for speaking her truth. Others accused her of trying to ruin a powerful man's career. Social media boiled over with debates. But beneath the noise, one truth resonated louder than any scandal. This wasn't just about one family. This was about the way the system itself worked. A white judge, draped in authority, could abandon his children of color and still rise to the highest seat in the courtroom, while the black mother who raised them was painted as unfit. It was more than personal betrayal. It was systemic injustice playing out in plain sight. For Jordan and Jada, the revelation became a turning point. Jordan's anger hardened into silence. He stopped speaking in class, stopped raising his hand. His teachers whispered, "See? We told you he was troubled." Jada grew restless, defiant. Every time someone mentioned their father, she lashed out. "He's not my father," she spat. "He's just a man in a robe." Angela tried to hold them close, but she knew some pain could not be soothed overnight. Still, even in their pain, the twins began to see something larger. If this could happen to them, the children of a judge, then what did it mean for every other black child? Every other mother who faced the system without a voice? Weeks later, a community meeting was called. The church basement overflowed with people, neighbors, activists, students, even local journalists. Angela didn't want to go at first. She was tired, worn down, ashamed of how public her private life had become, but Jordan insisted. "We should be there. When they walked in, all eyes turned to them. Whispers filled the room. Some pitied them. Some admired them. Then a woman stood up. Gray hair, tired eyes, but a voice like steel. "Angela, I raised 3 boys alone. I know what it means to be judged, to be pushed aside." "You are not alone," another man added. "We've been fighting this system for years. Maybe now, with your story, more people will finally listen." Angela looked at her children. For the first time since that day in court, they weren't just broken. They were listening. They were standing taller, because their pain was no longer just theirs. It was part of something bigger. Jordan started writing. Pages and pages of what it felt like to be black and silenced in a city that pretended to be fair. His words spilled into poetry, essays, spoken word pieces that left people breathless. Jada, fiery as ever, began organizing with student groups. She marched. She spoke on stages. She chanted through megaphones. Angela, too, found her voice again. She spoke at rallies, at schools, at community events, telling mothers like her, "You are not failures. You are fighters. You are raising the future." What had once been their deepest shame became their loudest truth. And Judge Hayes, the truth eventually caught up with him. Calls for his resignation echoed through the city. Petitions circulated. Reporters dug deeper into his rulings, uncovering a pattern of bias against defendants of color. He stepped down quietly, without apology, without acknowledgement. To him, the children remained a mistake, but by then it didn't matter. His power had crumbled. His silence spoke louder than any words, and Angela, Jordan, and Jada walked forward without him. Their story wasn't just about one family, one courtroom, or one judge. It was about a system where power often wears a robe, where the same hands that hold the gavel can carry secrets of injustice, where a black mother's sacrifices are twisted into evidence of failure, while a white man's abandonment is erased, forgiven, forgotten. It was about how racism doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers in policies, in assumptions, in the way truth is buried until it explodes. And yet it was also about resilience, about the power of a mother's love, a community's support, and a generation of young voices refusing to be silenced. In the end, the Carter family's story leaves us with a haunting truth. Injustice is not just written in laws. It is written in the choices people make, to stay silent, to walk away, to protect power at the cost of humanity. But it also leaves us with hope. Because every secret exposed, every truth spoken, every voice raised becomes a crack in the walls of oppression. Angela once carried her pain alone. Today she stands surrounded by her children, her neighbors, her community. Proof that even in the face of betrayal, there is strength. Jordan once feared his words didn't matter. Today he writes words that move people to action. Jada once thought anger was her only weapon. Today she channels it into change, and together they remind us all. The fight for justice is not won in silence. It is won in truth. So now the question turns to us. How many more stories like Angela's remain hidden in the shadows of our own communities? How many children wonder why the world sees them as threats instead of dreams? How many secrets of injustice do we allow to sit unchallenged in the highest seats of power? And most importantly, when the truth stands before us, will we look away or will we finally choose to see? Because what happened in that courtroom is not just their story. It is ours. It is America's. And until we face it, until we change it, the gavel will keep falling on generations to come.